is leaving the Pac-12. In case you missed it, yeah, they're headed back to the Big 12. The Buffs originally left in 2011 to join the Pac, and in 2024, it's back to the Big 12, a slightly new look Big 12 to say the least. It is time to read between the lines with our national college football analyst Carl Reed, but with something this major, we are also bringing in Adam Munsterteiger of Buff Stampede. Adam, I'm going to start with you here. Coach Prime has already proven that he can recruit nationally, as evident by what he's been doing this offseason. But now you're joining a conference in some very talent-rich states. So what impact will this move have on Colorado recruiting?
Well, what's crazy is you've already seen Colorado's recruiting start to trend back to more of the Big 12 footprint. Even before making this announcement, they were having a hard time getting some of the guys that they were getting out of California to produce in those classes. And so you saw between the 2020 class and the 2022 class, they actually signed 19 guys out of Texas, just 9 out of California. So it really is where Colorado recruiting was kind of trending anyways. And yeah, they've pulled guys from Oklahoma. And now with Coach Prime coming on board, obviously his ties to Texas and Florida is going to be big. And it's not just Coach Prime. So many of the guys, the majority of the guys on his staff have that history recruiting more in either the South or the Big 12. They just, outside of Brett Bartolone, didn't have a lot of experience on this coaching staff from the Pac-12 footprint.
So you hear what he has to say about how it affects the recruiters, but how about the recruits? How does all this conference realignment and figuring out what conference you're eventually going to play and affect a player's decision?
Well, you know, Emily, that when you're Deion and you're going to recruit Texas and you're going to recruit the state of Florida, what that means for the recruits is now they know and understand that they're going to get to play in front of their family members sometimes. Yeah. And that is also huge in realignment, and it's huge when players are picking schools that they're going to play for. You have Central Florida in that league from Florida. You have all of the Texas schools in the Big 12. So now you know they're already recruiting Texas and Florida heavily. Now those guys are going to get to play a few games a year in front of their friends and family, and that also is big in recruiting.
Yeah, Ohio often not talked about as much with Big 12, as Cincinnati is new to that league. But of course, Ohio has some great recruiting as well. And so, yeah, you just kind of expand everything. If we've still got Adam here. Yeah, Adam, I want to ask, we tend to put a lot of stock into the fact that the Pac-12 still doesn't have its TV deal solidified. We had some recent news come out that they are potentially going to announce it to their members within the next 48 hours. So we might get some resolution. It feels like something that we in the media talk about a lot is this big deal. But how much do you think that that's actually a topic of conversation among the recruits and those recruiting them?
Well, at the start, I think it becomes a bigger topic if the future of the Pac-12 becomes more in peril, because I think the Pac-12 is one more school, one more defection away from being in real trouble. And that's where it starts to hit living rooms in terms of parents not really wanting to necessarily send their son to a Pac-12 school with the question marks out there. That's part of why Colorado left, was that stability. They knew that roughly $32 million number was there for them. And from everything they had heard, and we'll find out when the number finally gets released here, but it doesn't sound like the Pac-12's number is going to be there. So if you're Colorado, you look to stability, and recruits and their parents are going to like that stability as well. Now, I wouldn't necessarily bury the Pac-12 yet. We'll see what George Kliavkoff is able to do. It just doesn't look great right now. And I think Colorado, with all the information they had in front of them, had to make the decision that they did.
I think that when you look at the way that the Pac-12 situation is affecting recruiting, the SEC and the Big Ten, they've made some huge statements, and everybody knows who they're going to be playing against, how much money, how much television time. The Pac-12 has a big dilemma right now because nobody really knows what's going on there. And so as teams start to exit the league, teams going to the Big Ten, teams going to the Big 12, the Pac-12 does have to do something to help solidify their programs. Oregon is a national brand, so I think it affects them probably the least because kids are always going to be excited about going to Oregon. But a program like Utah, who has built really on the West Coast, in the Samoan Islands and things like that. They have to do something for those programs to let the recruits know that there's some stability there.
Yeah, I think it's what both of you guys are saying is it's more just the general uncertainty and the kind of chaos surrounding the Pac-12 right now. I doubt that a lot of recruits are all that concerned with TV deals, but it's just the general, what's the future of the conference that I could potentially be playing in. Let's actually hear from Colorado's athletic director, Rick George, on the impending move to the Big 12.
Let me state that this move was not just based on money or finances. A decision this big has a lot more to do than just money. At the forefront of our minds in all of our decisions is our student athletes and their experience as Buffs. We've done our analysis, and they'll be traveling less in the Big 12, playing in more favorable time slots where we believe they can get greater national exposure and return to Boulder after away games at earlier times.
All right, Adam, we know about the Big Two. You mentioned it with the Big Ten and the SEC, but there seems to be maybe a race between the Big 12 and the ACC for that number 3 spot. So how does this move affect the Big 12's standing, bringing in Colorado in the overall college football landscape?
I think some of that is yet to be determined. And if you have some of these former group of 5 type schools, a Houston, a UCF going to a Big 12, if they're able then with that elevated status of at the current time being a Power 5 type program, and that elevates their recruiting, I think that does start to put the Big 12 on a little bit a better footing in terms of making that debate that we might be the 3rd best conference. But you're going to have some of those schools that the Big 12 has taken from smaller markets and have them really elevate their game from recruiting. And, Colorado's going to be one of them once they get into the conference next year and being able to build on all of the talent that Coach Prime has brought to Boulder so far. So it's going to be up to them as well to kind of elevate the overall prestige of the conference.
Now, you still have to consider the ACC a little bit ahead of the Big 12 because you have programs like Clemson who has won national championships. Florida State has national championships. Miami has national championships. So with the Big 12 losing Texas and Oklahoma, Adam is right. It's a wait and see thing. Can the teams in the Big 12 get into an expanded playoff that we're going to see and compete for national championships? That's going to be the deciding factor of who is the next best conference after the SEC and the Big 10.
Certainly a lot of different angles that we can hit on with this, but Adam, you have been so generous with your time. I know you are super busy right now covering all of this, so thank you for being on the show today. You can check out more of his work at Buff Stampede. In case you forgot, a Deion Sanders-led Colorado team is yet to actually play a down of football, and yet we've had more news this offseason than some programs have had over the span of decades. So it is crucial that you are routinely refreshing Buff Stampede for all things Colorado.